Hello, Omaha, and welcome back to Keep Moving Forward, a table talk for the City of Omaha Human Rights and Relations Department. I'm Lori O'Brien.
And I'm Laura Aite. And thank you for joining us last week as we heard from our special guest, Eric Ewing of the Great Plains Black History Museum.
And today I'm pleased to introduce our special guest, LaVon Stennis Williams. And LaVon Stennis Williams is regarded as a social conscious and visionary business owner. As a former attorney and business consultant, Stennis Williams has helped underperforming businesses, nonprofits, government entities, and corporations transform their entrepreneurial programs and operational efficiencies to achieve maximum growth. In addition to managing her company, Stennis Williams is the executive director of Reconnect Incorporated, a nonprofit organization she founded with her husband, and has transformed high-poverty, high-crime communities by focusing on assisting youth and adults in gaining skills needed to maximize their potential and overcome barriers to life successes. She is also trained as a mediator and life coach. Stennis Williams is a published author and motivational speaker and has a passion for preserving Black history, and recently opened up Mama's Attic, an African American arts and humanities center, as a venue to share the unique history and culture of African Americans. Stennis Williams is married to Brent Williams, also a business owner, and together they have 3 children and 5 grandchildren. Stennis Williams is a graduate of Creighton University, where she received her Bachelor's of Art and Juris Doctor. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Ms. LaVon Stennis Williams.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us today.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Welcome, LaVon. We're so excited to have you here and hear more about Mama's Attic and your story. So could you tell us a little bit about the history and of Mama's Attic and how that was founded?
Well, it was founded by myself in terms of wanting to have a venue for people to be able to come and hear about non-traditional stories about African Americans. We opened our doors December 7th of 2020 because I was committed to not letting that year end but not doing something positive. And so, but that was my year I had targeted to open Mama's Attic. And the whole purpose of it is to not compete with any other venue here in the city about history, but to give another opportunity for people to come and learn about the unique culture, the day-to-day activities of African Americans, as opposed to focusing on just historical moments.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And now you have you do a lot of work in Omaha, mm-hmm. right? And you also are the author of a children's book. Is that right?
Yes. When I grow up, I want to be like the brave men of Tuskegee.
Yes.
And I wrote the book. My grandson Brandon is the main character in it. And I wrote it because after talking with some Black teens about having met Mr. Holtz, who just recently passed, a Tuskegee Airman, they said, well, those people weren't real. And I could not believe that we have these teenagers who've been through our school system and felt that they were not real people. Yeah. And so I felt, well, it probably wasn't just limited to them. And so I wrote a book that was geared toward young people, but it's also written at a level that adults they really do like it. And so I'm very proud of the book, and that is kind of like, it's a companion to the reason why I started Mama's Attic as well.
That's great.
And we had the pleasure, actually, of visiting your museum last week. Could you kind of talk about what exhibits you have there right now?
Well, our current exhibit profiles the accomplishments of young people in America, and it's called Little People Who Made Big Impact. And what we do is we focus on the young people in our history. Some you know, some you might not know. Right. But through their life or death, they made a tremendous impact on America's history. And we go as far back as Gracie Wisher, who was a 14-year-old indentured servant who helped sew the flag that inspired the Star-Spangled Banner, to current day, Black Lives Matters and Little Miss Flint. So we focus on young people and the accomplishments they've done to bring us where we are today. And we look at it from the standpoint that it helps underscore the fact that the young people was used to revitalize the civil rights movement when it was dying out. And just as they used it, young people were useful in helping revitalize Black Lives Matter movement. So it sends a message that we have to listen to our young people. And it's a companion, or it picks up where the first exhibit left off, which was the Second Great Migration, which profiled African Americans who moved from the South to the North, hoping to escape Jim Crow barriers, but they encountered them here. And then we have the civil rights movement that took place in the South and the North to help break down those barriers. And this exhibit picks it up from that point of what role did the young people play through their various activities and efforts.
Can you kind of talk about what was really interesting about those pictures that kind of start off walking through the exhibit, those 3 pictures that kind of start the tour that you talk about from your grandmother?
Okay, that's when my family moved to Omaha. My mother moved here in 1952 with her family, her parents, and her 3 kids at the time. And so that is my wall, my inspiration wall, because my mother inspired me to do this. She made sure that I learned history because she felt every generation has a duty to pass it on to the next generation. So history was always around us. There was no such thing as Black History Month in our house. It was all year long. I remember in 6th grade, I was told to write a book report on Rosa Parks. And my mother said, no, you know about her. I want you to write it on somebody else. And so she gave me the name Biddy Mason. I had never heard of that name. And at times, we children thought that my mom was just making these figures up. But they were just, that was her way of making sure that we learned about the Black people that the schools weren't teaching us about. So we had a bigger picture of what accomplishments. And so the exhibit travels from the inspiration of my mother's background when she came to Omaha to the current exhibit, to the profiles of young people who have made a tremendous impact. We talk about Emmett Till, we talk about Sarah Collins Rudolph, who was the 5th little girl in the basement of the Birmingham bombing. Many people talk about the 4, but there was actually 5. And so we were able to introduce her to you. We introduced Claudette Colvin, who was actually the first person who refused to give up her bus seat before Rosa Parks. So we introduce you to all that, and then we take you to the Brown versus Board test, and how the Dahl test was used to validate the impact of segregation. We move to the crusade, the Children's Crusade. We do a special memorial to Sarah Collins Rudolph and the 4 little girls. Then we go into Black Lives Matter. And that is a layout of all of our exhibits. We have an exhibit, and they have multiple themes so that you come away with a complete picture and not just a snapshot of history.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, I think that's great, really important. When we visited, I found that there was so much information, and I loved how you tied it in the historical aspect and with the current movement. And one thing that stood out to me was the Dahl test, and how there's been an update of the Dahl test. Yeah. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
It was very disappointing for me, but in 1947, when the Clarks did the test to see the impact of Black kids being segregated on their own psyche and self-worth, and the Black kids chose the white dolls because they did not have a favorable view of dark or Black children. Well, that test was done again in 2010, and the results were the same. And that was so disappointing in spite of integration and seeing Black role models in every aspect of your life. The Black kids still chose the white doll. And for me, the message was that Black is still looked as being sinister or not acceptable. But for me, it begged the question, had Barack Obama or Kamala Harris been darker skinned, would they have been elected? Yeah. And so it's just, we realize we still have a lot of work to do. Right. And that was news to me when I saw it. I wasn't aware of it. But it just shows the purpose of the exhibit in terms of helping educate people on issues that we probably still need to work on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
And one thing you told us about was a little bit more about Sarah Collins Rudolph. Yes. And you have sort of a personal story with her, is that right?
Well, I met her while doing the research.
Yeah.
And she was the 5th little girl in the basement when the bombing took place at the 16th Street Baptist Church. history has pretty much written her off. Everyone talks about the 4 little girls, rightfully so, because they were killed. But Sarah Collins Rudolph was the 5th little girl in the basement, and she suffered tremendous injuries. She's blinded in one eye. She has physical permanent disfigurement because of the bomb blast. And the sad thing about it is that she still carries around glass in her body from that bombing. And no one has helped her. She's 70 years old, and she still has to clean houses to cover uncovered medical bills from the bombing blast. And there is a pain you hear in her voice when she talks about how America just forgot about her. And I happened to come across her while doing the research, and we've been in communication every day because her story was so unique. In fact, she did a Zoom presentation to help kick off the exhibit, and where the community was allowed to ask her questions about it. And her story is just, it gives you goose pimples when you listen to her.
Right, yes.
Absolutely. Now, is there some featured exhibits that are coming up that you would like to share?
Yeah, I'm excited about the exhibits. Our next exhibit, which will start in April, it talks about the African American culture and Easter and how the ritual of getting ready for Easter the old-fashioned way. So we'll peek into a home and see how a mother is getting her children ready for Easter through one exhibit. Another theme of the exhibit is church fans. And everybody, especially at Black churches, remember the church fan or the funeral fan on the stick. And so we'll profile all those pieces of the African American culture that made up a traditional Easter, from getting all prepped up and ready to actually the experience in church. We're going to profile some hats that women would normally wear to church. And so it's going to be a fun exhibit. It's going to be a little lighter than the first 2. But it's designed to complement by giving us the history of Black America and our culture. And then we have we're going to end the year talking about midwives. And I think our following one is slave cooks. And we're going to talk about the role of Black Americans in terms of changing our cuisine, and how they brought foods and recipes from Africa to America. And so I'm excited about it, but that will be our first 6 months, and our commitment to making sure that we change out the exhibit so people get a rounded perspective as opposed to just focusing on one era. You know, but I would add, if you look at the results of what happened with the current exhibit, where young people were involved in the movements, a lot of the laws that the Human Relations Department is enforcing today were the result of America's saying that was enough. You know, we did not move on getting legislation passed in terms of promoting civil rights, like the Voting Rights Act, the Fair Housing. We did not get really behind that legislation until America saw what was happening to children. From Bull Connors putting the dogs in the water hoses to the bombing. It's when those incidents happened that America said that's enough. And they put pressure on the president to get those pieces of legislation passed through Congress. And today, that's what your department is out enforcing. And so we owe a debt of gratitude to these young people that we profile, because they did help fast track some of the legislation that made our America better to everyone and for everyone.
Excellent point.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we're seeing now, you know, in the current movement, there is being led by a lot of young people again. And so I think that's really inspiring.
Yeah, because both movements had pretty much died out. The civil rights movement had lost its steam. It wasn't attracting the crowds. Adults were afraid of losing their jobs, and so they pretty much had started to not show up. The children revitalized that. They took it over and they took it forward. Same thing with Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter was pretty much being relegated as some antagonistic group where people really wasn't that behind it. But it took the killing of George Floyd and the mobilization of young people through social media to bring that to the forefront. And we saw America pretty much stand still and listen this past summer. And we have a lot of change coming from that. And so our young people can be forces of change if we step back and respect their voice and allow them to lead.
That's great.
Great point, absolutely.
And so how long are the current exhibits on display?
The current exhibit will be up until the end of March. And I encourage people to come down because of COVID. We do ask that you call and reserve your time pass, because we try to limit the number of people who are intermixing. And you can just give us a call at 402-740-6034, or just go to our email, mamasaddict1952@gmail.com, to reserve the pass ticket, your pass. And you know, we do take COVID very seriously, and so you can't touch anything in there, which is a good thing. But we want people to come and enjoy and learn and come often and bring other people.
Absolutely.
Now, can people also find Mama's Attic on Facebook?
It's on Facebook, yes. At Mama's Attic is the Facebook name. And we encourage you to visit Facebook, because that's where we post updates and we give you a glimpse of what the exhibits are about.
That's great. I'm looking forward to the other exhibits, and I think you tie a lot of creativity in with that, and I think that'll be interesting to draw people in to learn about things maybe they haven't been able to learn about before.
I really enjoy it. It's my passion.
Yeah.
You can tell. You absolutely can tell.
Right, and I wanted to ask you if you put all of the information and the displays together yourself when you put these up.
Yes, I do. The effort is all of mine. When I'm putting together the exhibits, I get a chance to learn twice. And so I curate all the exhibits myself. And I may reach out to a figure that's going to be featured for their special input, but I curate all of them myself.
Wow, that's impressive. And run a nonprofit on the side.
Yes.
Very busy woman.
Yeah, I enjoy it though.
Yeah. So out of the exhibits that you have coming up, is there any that you're most looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to the one about the midwives, because my grandmother was a midwife.
Oh, wow.
And that profession is coming back out.
Yes.
And so I'm looking forward to that. But I'm also looking forward to the Put Up the Church fans. And I guess I don't have a favorite. As I think about them, they're all of my favorite.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the Black cooks. And in that exhibit, though, we're going to display the mammy dolls that I collect. And I'm going to educate people why they're not to be viewed as something that is an insult to our African American culture. And so we'll talk about the mammy dolls, and then you'll also see my extensive collection of the mammy figurines that I've acquired over the years.
Oh, wow. And could you tell us a little bit about your collection?
I have hundreds of them,
Really?
and they're all different variations from the beginning, which are collectibles, to just modern day you might catch in the store when you travel in the South. But I was taught to not ever leave one behind. And my mother would say, when you see them at secondhand stores, buy them, do not leave them behind. And we've seen the change. We've seen the evolution of even with the Aunt Jemima pancake flour. They've actually changed their name now because of the efforts of the Black Lives Movement. So the collection I have starts out from the beginning, when their presence was to stereotype Black people, Black women particularly, to modern day, where it was just a part of the Aunt Jemima collection. But I have hundreds of them, and I'll be putting part of the collection on display, going back from the early additions to our modern ones.
That's great.
That'll be very interesting to learn more about.
Yes, and that's going to be very sensitive, because we as African Americans have been taught to look at Aunt Jemima as being an insult to us. But there's a unique history behind Aunt Jemima, or the mammy doll, or even Mammy. There was an actual woman that figurine represents, and so I'm going to talk about her life as a slave and what she did. And then we're going to talk about the cooks and how the African Americans influence on our American meals. And so it's going to be an education piece. So I'm excited.
Yeah, that's great. And Lori had kind of touched on these paintings that we had seen at Mama's Attic, right?
Oh.
And these were paintings that your mother painted,
yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, she was a self-taught folk artist, and she talked about, through her writing, through her drawings, her life in Mississippi. And there are 3 pictures that are featured. And everything she drew was about her life in Mississippi. either from the stories that had been handed down to her or what she actually experienced. And when she passed away, there was over 20 of these drawings that I was able to salvage and get framed. And I did an art show in February last year before COVID hit to profile her artwork. And that was another encouragement to do Mama's Attic, because people felt, LaVon, people should see this work of hers. Okay. But it's a memorial to her as well. And I'll be changing those pictures out from time to time as well. In fact, when I do the Mammy collection, I'm going to put up her drawings that she did on Mammy. And so I'm excited about that.
Yeah, they're beautiful paintings.
Thank you, thank you. That was something that she found a way to relieve her stress of growing up in Mississippi as a sharecropper and the harsh conditions that she experienced, along with her family members.
Right. Yeah, they were beautiful, and very impressive that she was self-taught. She sounds like she was a very inspiring woman, and you know,
she was.
Yeah.
In July, for the 4th of July, I'm going to put up a sheet that she did to celebrate the bicentennial. When African Americans were embroiled in an argument, should we celebrate it? She said, of course we should. So she did a sheet that will allow us to see the whole history of the bicentennial.
That's great. Well, it's been great having you on the show today and hearing all about Mama's Attic, and you have so much knowledge and information, so thank you so much. Is there any final comments that you'd like to leave us with today?
Well, I want to thank you for inviting me, and I want to encourage everyone to come out and see the exhibits. If you missed the first one, we have a picture book that will get you caught up. But we want you to come out and view the exhibits for what they're worth, what they have to offer to our community, and bring a friend. But contact us at 402-740-6034 to schedule a time pass.
Great.
Wonderful.
Well, thanks again for joining us today. It's been great having you.
Yes. Yes. And please join us next month, where we'll have Dr. Franklin Thompson, the director of the Omaha Human Rights and Relations Department here. I'm Lori O'Brien.
And I'm Laura Aite, and this has been Keep Moving Forward.